Here are two really cool ways that you can get some free rent. Doesn't take anything crazy. You can be an absolutely normal person or business. The second one is completely fresh and new. I've only recently started seeing this in leases, like as of this year. So my name's Sean Rakijic. This is Airbnb Automated, and let's get you some free rent. Right, welcome back Airbnb family. So before we continue, please like the video. It helps for the algorithm a ton, and I appreciate you doing that. If you're new to the channel, hit that subscribe button and then the bell, because you won't get all these videos unless you hit the bell. And we're gonna do a lot of time-sensitive stuff coming up here soon. So welcome to the Airbnb family. So this video is not your typical free rent video. There's a lot of stuff on YouTube where, like, they say if you work as a property manager or you're a live-in nanny or do like trade work, like maintenance and stuff for a property, that you can live for free forever. And that's not really the point. We're talking about how to like score some free rents in your negotiations, so that way you can either get ahead on your business or you can just kind of cut in and live for a little bit less in a completely normal scenario. You don't have to do any work and trade. There's no like hidden catch. All you have to do is say, I want it, and the landlord would say yes. So we're going to talk about how to get these, and then of course why a landlord would even agree to just giving you money for free, because that's essentially what you're asking them to do, is just give you free cash. Okay, so the first one is the one that you should already know. If you've followed this channel at all, you would hear me say this all the time: front-end lease concessions. So what is a front-end lease concession? Well, that is where a building will give you something on the front end. A concession typically tends to be cash back or free months of stay. So in Houston, for example, there's so many new apartment complexes that buildings, in order to kind of entice you to live there, they'll say that they'll give you 8 weeks free. A lot of times, buildings will try to prorate that. So what they'll have is their advertised market rate, which is like $2,000 a month per se. And if they give you 2 months free, they're going to give you that $4,000 off over the course of a year, right? That's a prorated concession. You can simply negotiate this on the front end. And even if a building isn't advertising a front-end lease concession or any lease concession at all, you can still ask for it. Now, why would a landlord agree to that? Well, let's look at northern states. Let's look at Wisconsin, Illinois, Pennsylvania, which I'm doing a lot of negotiation in. These states can suffer from the fact that people don't move in the winter. Right now, it's October, end of October, so November, December, January, those are tough months for a landlord to fill new tenants in. So coming into this season, you can tell a landlord, well, I'm going to take this place now. You're probably not going to have a landlord until, you're not going to have a tenant until, you could say, February or March. Like, your odds of getting a tenant is low, or you have to really drop your rates anyway. So let me take the lease from you now, and let me get the front 2 months free, and that way I can realize a little bit of the savings of moving in at an inoptimal time, and that way you're guaranteed to have a tenant. You don't have to worry about if this rent is going to be paid starting in January, because I'm going to be paying it because I'm on the lease with you. So landlord would love to have that lease, right? Because having that lease is guaranteed income in the future. And a lot of landlords are under pressure because they have a bank note. If they don't stay a certain percentage occupied, then they could get their building taken away. For example, there's a building in Houston where I was talking to a property manager. One of her previous buildings that she was in, she was hired on specifically to help them lease up. And this was an older building. This wasn't a brand new building trying to get up to 90%, which is another typical common situation in Texas right now. But her building, they had a huge loan. And if they didn't get over 90% occupancy, the bank was going to take the building back from them. In this case, being 90% leased is wonderful. Even if they're not 90% occupied, they would still be 90% leased. The bank would accept that. So in this case, just the same, you are pretty much giving them that situation where I'm going to lease from you. This is a guaranteed rent in the future if you give me 2 months for free now. Makes sense? Now, here's a couple tips for this. Not only do we talk about maybe taking the lease immediately, but if you can gauge the landlord's expectations of when they would think they would get this place full, then you can really realize what his benefit or her benefit is by taking it faster. Then you guys can maybe split that difference. Be like, well, if it was going to take you 10 weeks to fill, give me 5 of those weeks free, right? This is a good way to negotiate. This is a way that you, as a regular tenant, you don't have to be a business with a lot of money to play with. You can just realistically and logically make this small negotiation. It's cool. Now, another way to get a higher likelihood of yes with a multi-month front-end lease concession is to sign a longer lease. If they look at the total percentage off that you're getting off your rent by giving you a 36-month lease and they give you 2 months of rent for free, or let's say they give you 3 months of rent for free on a 3-year lease up front, first 3 months free. What they've done is they've given you a month per year off. It's much more likely to work in your favor if you ask for 2 months free on a 3-year lease than on a 1 year, right? Because they're still making more money off of you lifetime and that percentage discount's smaller. So that's my tips for you for front-end lease concession. Now the second one is kind of crazy. You can still potentially do it as a regular tenant, but this one is really more for my Airbnb business owners. Now, if you're not an Airbnb business owner and you're watching this because you're a regular tenant trying to get some discounts, I welcome you to continue watching. And maybe this will turn you on to the idea of running an Airbnb business by renting. It's kind of cool. All of you Airbnb rental operators, throw it in the comments. How many properties do you have? Because a lot of people probably would love to see how awesome this kind of stuff is. I welcome all of you in the Airbnb family to put that in the comments. So, this is called a trigger. Not like my past video where like I called out Morris Invest, like that's not this type of trigger, not the red eyes. So in a lease contract or any other contract, a trigger is when something happens, something triggers, or a part of the lease comes into effect, or a part of the contract comes into effect. So it's like a dormant provision in a lease. Now, one of the most popular triggers that I'm seeing lately in leases is called a recession trigger. So for example, let's say I take an entire building. There's a builder, I'm taking one in Philadelphia right now. We're negotiating 28 units in a 28 unit building. That's a master lease essentially where you take the whole thing. I say I'll pay you this lump chunk of rent. And let's say all like apocalypse comes with a recession and everything just goes terribly. People stop traveling, stuff like that. If I have no flexibility in that negotiation and I have to pay, say, $30,000, $35,000 a month in rent for this building, maybe more, and I have no business because the recession just like took the bottom out of the market, if he loses me as a tenant and I pay him $0, he suddenly loses all of his revenue and the bank could come calling on that note. Like we discussed earlier, if a building doesn't stay full, the bank will come after you. So he needs to stay full. And normally his risk is diversified. If he has 28 tenants in a 28 unit building and 3 of them get evicted because they couldn't pay because of the recession, he just goes and tries to find 3 new tenants, but he's still 25 of 28 full, right? So now that he's invested to you in a big, big way, it doesn't have to be a whole building. You could have 10, 20 leases. When somebody has an irregularly high relationship with you in volume, you can make these types of recession triggers. So for example, there's a landlord in Philadelphia that's signed with a company called Sonder. Many of you know Sonder. They're worth over $1 billion. They're kind of the poster child for renter arbitrage right now, but there's a lot of players in the game, myself included. So Sonder signed an agreement with a landlord in Philadelphia. And what they put as one of their recession triggers is that if the Dow Jones drops 700 points in a day, they get a month of rent for free. Well, if you remember, like 3 months ago, the Dow Jones went crazy. So Sonder got 2 months of rent for free in a week. Bang, bang, right? Makes the landlord rethink how they want to negotiate that recession trigger, right? Like if they could get a free month of rent every single week because the Dow Jones goes that crazy, they probably want to put a cap on that because otherwise Sonder could essentially just live for free if the Dow Jones went like that. That's an example of a recession trigger. Now, I will be publishing a course on taking entire buildings, and I will be giving away leases with these types of triggers in there as kind of like a template document, stuff that I've been paying my lawyer a lot of money for. So stay tuned for that in the future. But with that said, I hope this was helpful, helps you find some extra rent. And to wrap that up, a landlord, if they rely on you, will be more likely to give you a trigger or a modular type of rent. So let me give you one last example because I really feel I kind of left you with just half a solution and I don't do half, right? We're going to do the whole thing. So another way that you can do this, you can tell your landlord, well, the season tends to be slow in the winters. And so we're going to take 20 properties from you. And what we'll do is we're going to pay this what we call base contribution. The rent that you want is $1,500. So what we'll do is we'll pay you $1,000 a month completely, and then these months will pay you $1,800 instead, where in the winter we'll pay you $1,000, or we'll pay you $1,000 every month, and then as we make profit, what we pay you goes up. So that's like a hybrid rent model. So that's not a trigger, but that's a way that you can pay less rent and kind of just be on the books and the landlord's cool with it. Because The landlord wants enough money to pay their bank note. There's a lot of ways that people make money on properties. If you watch my buddy Sean Ray's stuff, he talks about how, you can take a building, it can go up in value like appreciate, and of course you could be depreciating the property as an income property, and all those things work out for a builder. Even if they're not making like positive cash flow on you, they're still making money elsewhere, believe it or not. So with that said, I'll leave it right there. Thank you for watching Airbnb Automated. Share the video with your friends, and I'll see you on the other side.